Sergio Perez has finally returned to F1 action in a blacked out, debranded 2023 Ferrari. That's right, what you're seeing is not a mistake, just a rare case of one F1 team using another F1 team's car and testing allocation to gain some valuable on-track experience before Cadillac joins the grid as a brand new 11th team in 2026. We reckon this is the first time a black Ferrari F1 car has run on track since Michael Schumacher and Nicola Larini tested an unliveried 1998 prototype on slicks in late 1997, and it's also a fun career twist for Perez to finally drive an F1 Ferrari again, as he was a Ferrari Driver Academy member at the start of his F1 career and was in contention for a future race seat there before cutting ties to take up his ill-fated McLaren offer for 2013. It's a rare and unusual thing to see, and the fact Perez is driving a Ferrari again and that Ferrari is unliveried is very much because of the unusual situation Cadillac finds itself in. Most of Cadillac's operational preparation until now has been conducted through simulating race weekends at its new Silverstone factory, which we visited in the summer and made a video about. This time, Cadillac has lent on its Ferrari partnership, which principally involves engine supply for the first few seasons of Cadillac's F1 journey to actually get boots on the ground and begin building real-world race team experience. The aim here is to build working relationships between Cadillac mechanics and race engineers, plus Ferrari personnel who will work with the team as part of the engine-customer relationship. The race understands Cadillac had a preliminary session at Ferrari's own test facility Fiorano ahead of a 2-day test at Imola. Perez is on driving duties because 2026 teammate Valtteri Bottas is still contracted to Mercedes as its 2025 reserve driver, though Bottas has been allowed preliminary contact with Cadillac for a seat fitting and to outline some minor operational aspects, like his steering wheel preferences. This is the only way Cadillac can do any kind of real-world Formula 1 testing before 2026 kicks off, with 5 days of collective behind closed doors running at Barcelona in January. And it's only possible because current F1 rules permit testing of previous cars and the freedom to allocate some of these test days to a third party. This is effectively the same kind of running Lewis Hamilton did in January 2025, before Ferrari's current F1 car was ready to go. And as Ferrari team boss Fred Vasseur points out, it allows Cadillac to figure out the logistics, the setup of the garage, the infrastructure, the IT system, and so on. In this particular case, Ferrari essentially loans the car out and Cadillac is responsible for operating it. The purpose of the test is not a full-blown affair to pursue setup changes and chase performance, but to establish the right internal practices and develop verbal and physical communication in the garage and over team radio. The benefits are twofold. Perez gets back behind the wheel of an F1 car for the first time since his last race for Red Bull in Abu Dhabi last December, and Cadillac's team gets valuable operational experience on various tasks like refuelling, operating tyre warmers, working on the car, bleeding the hydraulics, and so on. Cadillac's team members are not new to F1, as it has recruited many people from different teams, but each will have their own way of doing things, and the key is to start building a Cadillac way of communicating. This comes down to what vocabulary is used over the radio, but also the right movements and actions within the garage and in the pit lane. It's the next step in bringing together the real-world race team, although virtual simulations will continue. Cadillac has run several race weekends remotely this season. This includes everything from running entire race distances to understanding how mandatory driver media appearances impact the start time of post-session engineering debriefs. According to the team's executive engineering consultant Pat Simmons, Perez has already been pushing the team on the feel of its power steering system from the steering wheel, based on that early simulator running. Cadillac is running its 2026 entry itself from multiple locations and massively lags behind the existing teams in terms of infrastructure and personnel. It has a primary operations base at Silverstone and is conducting wind tunnel testing from Toyota's Cologne site in Germany, but also plans to utilise a brand new TWG facility at Fishers in Indiana, as well as Cadillac and General Motors technology centres. Then there is a new GM Performance Power Units headquarters in North Carolina, where the team's planned works engine will be designed, tested and built. There's now less than 75 days to go before Cadillac joins the other 10 teams at the first pre-season test in Barcelona, and there's no escaping that Cadillac still has a huge job list to tick off. This includes a looming crash test, sending its freight off to Australia for the first race of the new season, hitting some very aggressive aero targets, and continuing what the team calls a frightening recruitment drive for more staff to add to a headcount that has now climbed above 400 people. Coming from so far back compared to every other F1 team means Cadillac has to play safe when it comes to making sure it hits all its design and manufacturing deadlines. It can't afford to hold things back until the very last minute to eke out every final bit of performance. One misstep within its organisation and Cadillac risks not getting a car out on track at all. That's why the team could well be the first to put its 2026 chassis through the mandatory FIA crash tests over the next few weeks. The timing for delivery of chassis 00, as Simmons calls it, was made a long time ago. And it's not just crash test deadlines that are looming. Cadillac's first batch of sea freight leaves on November 18th for the opening races of the season. Simmons expects the fire-up of the new car to happen before Christmas, with a shakedown test planned for early January prior to the collective pre-season test that takes place in Spain from the 26th to the 30th of January. While committing early to getting its chassis ready has some minor implications in terms of final packaging, Cadillac doesn't expect this to massively compromise overall performance. That's because so much of the car's aerodynamic performance will be down to floor, bodywork and wing designs, areas where Cadillac says it has bold ambitions. While nobody knows right now what others are up to, so there is an element of guesswork in terms of what is a so-called aggressive target, Simmons revealed Cadillac has basically taken the FIA's estimate for 2026 downforce levels and aimed for a bit higher. Simmons accepts the FIA did something similar with the 2022 ground effect generation of cars, and the teams, as Simmons put it, exceeded that by a long way. But he thinks the FIA has now recognised it underestimated the teams before those rules came in, so has this time set a baseline aero target that he calls quite realistic. Even so, it's probably unrealistic to expect a completely new startup operation like Cadillac to be properly in the mix with the established teams from the start of 2026, even if it manages to achieve those very aggressive internal targets. Well aware that it was going to be impossible to get its own power unit ready in time for 2026, Cadillac will begin its life in F1 as a Ferrari customer team. It wasn't immediately clear whether this could expand into more than just engine supply and mirrors something like the Haas arrangement, where the team takes more of the so-called listed parts that F1 teams are permitted to buy and sell from one another. But Simmons has made it emphatically clear that Cadillac will only buy the power unit and the gearbox cassette from Ferrari. Everything else it will design in-house, from scratch, in Simmons' words. In the meantime, Cadillac still needs to map out its plans to become a full works entry in the future and replace those customer Ferrari engines with its own power units. Cadillac's original 2026 F1 entry was predicated on a commitment to entering as an engine manufacturer from 2029, but that timetable no longer appears so certain. The FIA has been openly debating with teams and manufacturers the idea of a future switch to V8 engines for 2031, or even the year before. That would make it nonsensical for Cadillac to push on investing hundreds of millions of dollars in a next-generation turbo hybrid for 2029, only to have to throw it in the bin 1 or 2 years later. But that doesn't mean Cadillac is going to abandon work on its engine immediately. From parent company General Motors' perspective, it's important to keep pushing so that its F1 engine facilities are primed for the future and can respond if and when the rules switch. After all, any infrastructure and technical understanding it can build up in the interim is bound to be useful and is all part of closing that gap to the existing teams, a gap that makes Cadillac's first season in F1 a truly daunting prospect, even if it feels it's making decent progress on getting itself ready for battle.